I recently had a bit of a mishap that made it appear I had wet my pants. But I didn't, so don't think that. Yes, an accident occurred last week, but not the kind of accident you think, just an accident that looked exactly like the kind of accident you think. You see, I was a camp counselor for 4th grade kids. And kids are awesome. Hilarious, energetic, heartwarming, they're the best. I had a great time. But there was one moment that was less than great. We were on the bus heading to one of our camp adventures, and of course I was surrounded by kids and my fellow camp counselors. On my lap I had my backpack with my lunch in it. Just a classic paper sack, I was brown bagging it. And in this lunch sack was a water bottle. So I was relaxing in my seat, singing camp songs and making sure the kids weren't doing anything life-threatening. And slowly I started to realize that my right leg was feeling oddly cold. Everybody chill. Ice to meet you. That was an Arnold Schwarzenegger reference from Batman and Robin. Very applicable. Let's kick some ice. Somehow this feeling in my leg didn't bother me for several minutes. I don't know what I was thinking. Oh, this is one of those freezing cold, vaguely numb leg sensations. It'll pass. Nothing serious. Just potential nerve damage to the lower extremities. I guess I figured it was like that ghost phone sensation when you think you feel your phone vibrating in your pocket, even if it isn't actually there. But finally the feeling grew noticeable enough that I decided to check it out. I lifted my backpack and saw that the back of the pack was totally soaked. It was like my shirt after I run for a long time, which is a gross but undeniably apt comparison if you're aware of my struggle with excessive perspiration. So this backpack is totally wet, and I open it up and see that my brown lunch bag is soaked too. And then I reach inside the bag and pull out my water bottle. I tip the bottle upside down and a few droplets of water slip out from under the lid. Now I can see that the lid of the bottle was screwed on just ever so slightly crooked, allowing water to seep out gradually, one drop at a time. In this way, the water has managed to slowly and completely permeate my backpack as well as my leg without me really noticing until it was too late. In moving the backpack aside, I finally see the huge stain on the right side of the crotchal region of my jeans. That's a term I picked up from Will Ferrell in Anchorman. Crotchal region. I mean, it couldn't have looked more like I wet my pants if I had been trying. It's like how people say if you throw a frog into a pot of boiling water, it will jump out immediately, but if you put it in a pot of cool water and gradually increase the temperature until it's boiling, the frog will stay in and die. The frog adapts to gradually changing conditions to the point of extinction. Similarly, my leg adapted to gradually increasing wetness to the point of embarrassment and the subsequent extinction of my reputation. I know immediately that I'm facing a momentous decision. The way I see it, there are two options. 1. I play it cool. Try to hide the stain with the long rain jacket I brought with me and hope that none of the kids or counselors see it. 2. I fess up immediately, publicly revealing that the water bottle spilled and created the stain, rather than my bladder. I figure that number 1 is risky, as the stain is quite noticeable, and if somebody sees it before I have a chance to explain it, it will really give the impression that I'm trying to cover up a legitimate bladder-related accident. But number 2 is risky as well. If I explain it right away, then everyone will know what's going on and that I have nothing to hide, and I'll probably avoid embarrassment. But the stain seems so conspicuously placed that there's a chance people won't believe my story about the water bottle. After mulling this over for a couple minutes, I decided to go with number 2. I realize it's funny because I'm saying number 1 and number 2 and they're bathroom related and the whole story is bathroom related, and it's like, oh, it's funny, but that was unintentional. So I turn to all of the kids around me and say, okay everybody, it looks like I wet my pants, but I want you to know that I spilled my water bottle in my backpack and that's what this is. So it looks like I wet myself, but I didn't. And of course all of the kids just yell out, he wet his pants! And I'm thinking, just wait this out, they know your story's true, they're just messing with you, it's all a mind game. And even my fellow counselor who's sitting next to me says, sure, it's water. Right. But eventually things cool down and the kids seem to believe me. Then my seatmate brings up an interesting point. He says, you know, now you can actually wet your pants today and nobody will notice. Which of course is brilliant. Now I have the perfect cover for an actual inter-trousers urination situation. But I figure that's a card I probably shouldn't play. I don't want to drop down to that level. So we eventually get off the bus and head out into the world. And of course the stain in my pants is still far from dry. Because of course I wore jeans that day, one of the least waterproof articles of clothing ever conceived by man. I mean, if you were stranded in the desert, dying of dehydration, you could literally wring out your jeans to retrieve the excess moisture they have gathered from the air over the past several weeks and survive for months on that fluid. As we head out in public and I'm in the company of people who did not hear my testimony on the bus, I figure I should utilize one of the strategies I contemplated earlier, and I put on my raincoat, which covers the majority of the stain. This works fairly well and manages to preserve my modesty, for the most part, until the pants finally dry out several hours later. Unsurprisingly, that water bottle was never to be used or trusted again. Ever. Later, when I was telling this story to my grandparents, what better story to tell your grandparents than one in which you sort of wet your pants in front of a bus full of 10-year-olds? My grandpa had a clever suggestion. He said, "You should have stood up on the bus and made a show of fumbling your water bottle, dropping it, and spilling it on your pants, thus covering up the original stain and instantly quelling any suspicion that you would wet yourself." This was genius. Genius! And I only wish I had thought of it. But ultimately, things worked out for me, and I managed to survive with my reputation mostly intact, whatever that reputation may be. I suppose the lesson here is that sometimes honesty really is the best policy. And being honest even about something as embarrassing as spilling a good pint of water on your crotch can avoid further and worse embarrassment later on. I'm happy I made the choice I did. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go explain to several 10-year-olds that the resounding fart noise on the bus really was the sound of my foot forcing an air pocket out of my shoe. And that's also where the smell came from. I'm just kidding. None of that really happened. I'll catch you later.